So, last week we talked about mathematical nodes such as addition, subtraction, multiplication, division, the append vector, and clamp. This week we're going to go over more dynamic ones such as sine and cosine, which are trigonometry functions, and how we're going to use them inside of the shader system inside of Unreal Engine. We're also going to go over similar mathematical nodes, but these are more of transformations for UV objects, which are panner and rotation. So how I'm going to show this is I have three materials that are going to be empty on this guy. This is my very, very quick version of a film projector. This is something that I had done when I was in college to learn about shaders, at least the basics of it. Um, in here, I have four materials. So one of them is going to be our, let me click it open. So one of these is going to be our, let me highlight this. So this is going to be our little lens, which I'm going to show you how to use sine and cosine with. The next one is going to be, this is our body, which actually, let me see if I can throw in a gray. Type in floor, basic floor. Okay, so basic floor to cover that. And then I have here a film reel strip, which I'm going to show you how to use panner for. And then finally we have this guy right here. He is our little spheres we're going to use for the film reels, and this is going to show you how to do rotation nodes. So let me minimize this, and then here's our texture. It's channel packed with our three things that we're going to need. So right here, I have our grayscale of the film reel itself. And then in here, I have the actual film that I'm going to be used to pan, which it's a seamless texture. So you have to make sure it's seamless or else this will not work. And I'll show you why. And our last one is this little dot right here, which is going to be used for setting up where my light's going to flicker for this guy. I wonder why I have this artifact, but it's okay. So let's go back here and let's start off with, let's go in here. Let's create another material. And this one we're going to show off, the sine and cosine. So this is going to be our lens and matte. Okay. So to understand what sine and cosine are, let me mathematically speaking, a sine wave is an equidistant waveform that goes from either, in Unreal Engine's sake, a 0 value to a 1 value to a 0 value to a 1 value. And it goes in an equal amount of time. There's no change to it. Same thing with a cosine wave, but the valuation is offset a little bit. So the timing is going to be off just a little bit. It's the same amount of repetition. It's the same amount of time repetition, but it's going to be offset a little bit from a sine wave. So first thing we'll do is let's type in cosine and then sine. And you wonder, how do I even use these things? Well, one thing is, let's say we hit start previewing. Error. There's nothing's going to work because you need to have time, evaluation of time. So, you can try this and plug in just a 1 to it. Nothing happens. You can't do time with a value like this. You need to actually have an actual thing, an actual node. This is the time node. The time node takes runtime on play and allows you to use that Time is a very hard thing to talk about. It's like a weird metaphysical thing, but yeah, it's basically taking the real time that when you hit play, it uses the current seconds in play to mess with the shader. So if I plug this guy in, and you see we have it flickering from black to white, and it's going at a normal repetition. The same thing is going to be if I do cosine as well. So if I hit preview here too, it does the same thing, but it offsets it a little bit. Now, if you want to, you can actually multiply these two together. And of course, because it's in an offset, it's just going to multiply and shrink the amount of time that it goes from black to white. But also, you can do some simple mathematics too, such as you can multiply it. So if we want maybe one value to be a little smaller, so we'll half the sine value. So this one only goes to gray because we're multiplying this value and darkening it just a little bit. But you can also double it instead of half it. So it makes it a lot brighter. Or maybe you don't like these values, so maybe we'll hit divide. Maybe we want a half the value of it. So let's hit 2. We'll hit preview here. So it shortened the time from the valuation because we're halving it. Same thing, we hit 1. It's just going to go back to normal. Do 0.5. It's going to double it. So on and so forth. That's the basics of time and sine. But one of the simplest reasons why we have these values is because it's a rudimentary function that you can use in different kinds of ways. One of the easiest ways you can do is plug this guy into the emissive color. And for the sake of everything, let's turn this guy into a default lit material, or unlit material, actually. So it's not going to take in any light. Let's save. Let's plug in. We'll do just a quick instance because I don't want to worry about it. No, it's the one at the bottom. So now we have a flashing little lights. It's supposed to basically mimic what a projector does. It's projecting light. So, I mean, I can go back in here and do 0.1. Now, I do apologize if, hopefully none of you guys have any issues with flashing lights. But yeah, this is a very simple way of doing a flickering or a flashing light. You can mess with the values and change it up just a little bit. Like maybe you want to change the fluctuation so it flickers at a random order. Like if you want to do that, you can just change how you interpret the sine and cosine waves. Like maybe instead of a multiply, you want to do it in addition to the sine wave to help try and offset it a little bit. So yeah, see now it's actually elongating the time between the two pauses. We'll hit this guy. We'll multiply him by 2. Oh, made a vector 2 by accident. Just trying to apply these kinds of valuations and changes can help a lot. If you want to, you can even add in another sine wave, and maybe instead of doing addition or multiplication, you can try and subtract it a little bit. So let's go here. We hit the divide. So let's hit subtract. We'll subtract a normal sine wave to it. Plug this back into the divide. Maybe change the divide to a multiply. Start preview. 2. Maybe we want to just, in general, just double up on the entire speed. You can actually go and actually plug in any value to the time and actually double the speed, slow down the speed, whatever you want. So now you have it flashing more. Maybe you also want them to run at different times. You can also do that as well. Any combination you want to, you can make it work. Oh yeah, I forgot. I gotta plug him back in, else it won't work. There we go. So that's the basics of sine and cosine waves. You can also adjust some things like maybe you want to use this in a different kind of way. Like maybe you want to, hang on, let me try. We'll take the sine. We'll take our cosine in this guy, and let's just, delete all this crazy math. Let's do a lerp. Let's do 3 values. This one is going to be a red value. This one's going to be a blue value. Let's throw some time on here. So here what you have is you're taking the two colors, the red and the blue, and because it's a lerp, it's going to try and blend and interpolate between the two colors. Say this is going to be the black point and this is going to be the white point. Sine, since it goes from black to white in a rhythmic order, it's actually flowing through these colors, but it's also making a purple because it's interpolating the red and the blue color together, which is making this violet purple color. It allows you to switch between things very quickly. Maybe you want to change the gradient a little bit, so let me do value step. Maybe instead of having this gradient, you want to have it where instead of it having this kind of midpoint, you just want it to flash between the two colors. You can do it with this. What this node does, value step, is it takes the gradient between the two values, in this case, the gray points, and it cuts it. And in this case, it's kind of contrasting, but it's also clamping your values at the same time. If you want to, you can even take it a step further to 3. How this kind of works is the offset, what it's doing is the 0.5 is when it flickers between the two values, because instead of it also just cutting your gradient, it's also kind of pushing between one or two values. So if I hit 1 on this, not with that 1, it tries to keep it on an even value between the two. If you go any further than that, like say a 2, it starts to flicker between the two and is trying to figure out which area is going to compensate more for it. Say if we go backwards a bit, it changes it so that since this is on the lower end, on the closer to 0 end, it's going to use more blue than it's going to use more of red. Like say we go back to the 1, it's going to have a little bit more red, but it's also going to have a different value to it. Say we have a -1, does the same thing because it's a normal gradient. Whether it's going to be in the negatives or the positives, it still does that. Let's try 50. Crazy number. Fluctuates between weekly. But in this case, if you want to have the gradient switch without having the purplish color, you can do it like that. But say maybe you don't want this, maybe you want to have it with textures too. You can throw in textures as well, and it will lerp between the two textures as a value. But like I said, we don't need this. Fun. Let's plug all these guys in. Hey, see, there we go. Now we made it where it's more random because it's now flickering between the two fluctuations while they're going in their waveform. So they're going up and down, but they're going at different speeds. So it's flipping between the two at an equal but almost random kind of way. Let's bring this back down from crazy 50 to 0.5. So now we have a kind of more of a rhythmic but almost random like flicker. So here we have that for our lens. Now let's move on to our panner. So that's going to be our film and matte. Now here, let's see. Drag that guy in here. And let's hit P. You hold down P and you left click, and you now have your panner node. And you're wondering, well, what's a panner node? Well, panner nodes work within the UV coordinates themselves. So let's kind of flatten this guy out. It's not doing anything because we don't have any actual coordinates. So here you're going to hold down U and left click and put a texture coordinate in. So we now have this. And then the other thing you're also wondering is, well, why is it not moving? Well, we need time. No, not the texture, that time. I wish T worked for time and not just that. And then you need movement. 0.5. And then let's hit preview. And now we have some moving textures. But maybe we don't want all that. Maybe we just want to have, in this case, we'll do their base material. Let's turn off our stop preview. Oh, not that one. It's going to be our green texture. There we go. So now we have a perfectly panned texture, and it's counting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. But maybe you want to change up the speed a little bit. You can go in here and adjust the speed if you want. Like in this case, it's using the Y, which is our V value, which is going to go up to down. But maybe you have a texture that needs to go left to right. So you can go in here, you could do that. But also remember, now that you have this Y in here, it's kind of going in a slow diagonal gradation. So you can hit 0 for that. Or if maybe you want to go the other way, you can hit -1. And now it goes this way. We don't want that either. But, you know, we're also doing master materials, so maybe we need a parameter. So let's convert this parameter, and we'll do film speed, since this is going to be for film. Let's save. Let's go here, and let us click in here, type in film. Actually, no. Right now, it's not doing anything because, oh, I must have accidentally selected that. Let me go to our, where is our film at? Let's create an instance. Drag him in now. Let's double click. And now, since we only have this one value, let's drag him down. Close look at our film. And 0.5. Oh, did I put in the wrong value? I think I did. Oh, yes, that's why. So when you do this, if you do a single value scalar, it's going to do it for both. What you need is an append vector. And then you need to plug it into whichever value. So the top one will always be U, and the bottom one will always be V. So we plug this one in. And then let's plug this one in. Boom. Because we don't want it to move at all. We only want it to move in one direction. So let's go back to our film projector, and boom. Now it's on the move. But it's flowing in the opposite direction. So let's go, whoa, not -5. Actually, no, -2. Let's go chaotic. See, now we got a fast moving film reel. So let's hit save. And then let's go on for our last node. And this one, material, and it will be our real master material. Let's go back to our textures, and let's drag out our camera test one. And now, I believe, is it R? No, reflection vector. Rotator. So in the same line as a panner node, rotator nodes also work with coordinates as well. But in this case, it doesn't rotate on the actual, like on the actual UVs of pushing it in and out of the boundary. It's just going to rotate based off of your center. So we'll hit this. We'll hit start preview. So by default, it's already doing it with just some basic time. So let's hit 0. Let's do 0.3. So the reason why it automatically is working right now is because I had it all centered. But maybe you have an asset that's off-centered a little bit. You want to change where it's going to rotate. Just hit this. It's going to offset wherever your center is. So you have to remember where. Actually, if you stop it, it will help a lot. Hit 0. It actually will help you center and show off wherever your thing's going to be. Maybe even start with like a very slow speed, like this. So you can see it's now rotating on a center that's over here now. Instead of being directly in the middle, it's taking it just a little more to the left. Or maybe you want to do it a little more to the right. Same thing here. If you want to do it to go closer to the bottom, or closer to the top. So here it's rotating down here now, but we want it directly in the middle. And then of course, if you want to, you can sorry, I hit the T button again. Time. And then same thing here. We'll put in append vector. Actually, no, not this. That's actually not going to be speed. Oh yeah, I forgot. It's not going to be this. That's just going to adjust the coordinates where your center is going to be. The only way for you to actually control the time is going to be through this. See, stopped. And then, boom, now you have speed. Let's convert this to a parameter. Rotation, speed. Let's hit save. And let's plug this guy in to our base color. Go back to all materials. Create an instance. And just drag him in. And as you can see, it's flowing in the opposite direction. We don't want that, so let's do -3. But we need to make it go way faster. Let's do -9. Oh, he needs to go way faster than that. -25. There we go. See, now that works pretty well. And then, of course, if you want to change some things a little bit like our film reel, let's go in and turn this on and turn on two-sided for him. That way you can actually see the reel on both sides. But look, without really needing to do any animations, you have a fully animated asset. Of course, you do have to make sure that within your own performance constraints, you can allow for materials. If this is going to be a hero asset that's going to be used for gameplay or it's going to be used for a cinematic or something, by all means, go for this. If you do have a other problem where maybe you do actually need to change this up a little bit, you can, of course, work around it and find what thing needs to be working the most. It might be cheaper to do an actual animation instead of doing all these. Right now, this is only just using the vertex information that's in it. It's not actually moving anything. It's just giving off the fake look that it is. But just be mindful that in production, you may not be able to get away with having 4 materials. They might have to break down some of them. Or in some cases, like I did have earlier on, here I have this, which is a mask to use if I have assets that have other UVs here and here and here, but this is going to be where my lens is going to be doing the flash. I can use this instead of going in and having it flicker through here. I can just change the lerp so that I can add another lerp and then add that mask to that lerp and then just have a black value for it. So if I go in here, lerp this, and then do our, let's go back to our textures. Actually, no, I changed that. We'll do our lerp here. We're going to be using the actual texture as the lerp. We'll put this in B, and then we'll put this value here. And now let's start the preview. Oh, wait, no, not alpha. It's in the blue channel. Sorry. There we go. So now we have it where it's only just flickering in one area. And that's only if, instead of having, maybe you have a constraint for, instead of 4 materials, you can only do 3 materials. So in this case, you can allow to have other assets or other mesh UVs in here, and then just have your normal prop material, master material, and then just have this as a other float value that you can turn on and off if you want. So let's hit save. Yep, and that's it.